Tujikaze, tujikaze, jikaze. Tujikaze, tujikaze, jikaze. Africa, tujikaze, tujikaze, jikaze. America, tujikaze, tujikaze, jikaze.
You are listening to African Father in America podcast by Simon Javan Okello, live from Seattle, Washington, USA.
Thank you so much for joining me for another amazing session of the Daily African Proverbs. My name is Simon Javan Okello, and we are live streaming on YouTube, and we're also live streaming on Clubhouse. And we are taking a virtual journey to Nigeria today. And my special guest is Gogo Rutendo Ngara, who joins me here every Thursday. If you are, watching this channel for the first time, I encourage you to subscribe, and I also encourage you to push the thumbs up button so that next Thursday when we are here with Gogo Rutendo Ngara again, you can catch the show, and also tomorrow when we have the Daily African Proverbs, you can also catch it. If you're on Clubhouse, welcome, and feel free to ping one or two people into the room. Gogo, I hope you're doing well. Every time that we have you here for the Daily African Proverbs, it's just a moment of learning, and it's really truly like being around the village fire and learning things that you go out and apply in the world. And so I just wanted you to share with us how you're doing this morning, and then share with us what today's proverb from Nigeria means to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Simon. It's such a pleasure to be here again on this Thursday. For me, it's not morning, it's late afternoon. Soon the sun will be setting in the next couple of hours. But we're receiving a lot of rain here in South Africa, which is wonderful because there were years that we had of drought. And it's so wonderful to see the heavens having opened and the crops growing and bringing us the oranges that we see and the bitter leaves that we see in today's proverb. And it's just having these daily proverbs for me is it's so wonderful because a proverb it's like a bite-sized or concentrated piece of wisdom. It's like a superfood. It's packed with nutrition. And proverbs, often also contain bite-sized information or knowledge that is just seeking to be unpacked. And so I know today you have given me a proverb here, this proverb that says, "A man who thinks everything around him is sweet should remember that bitter leaves grow in the bush with oranges." This feels like a rather complex proverb today. And so how does it want to be unpacked? Today is the 20th of January, 2022. And on the 30th of January, 2020, that is almost 2 years ago, the World Health Organization declared a novel virus that had emerged in Wuhan, China, in November 2019 as a public health emergency of international concern. And by March of 2020, it was recognized as a pandemic that caused by a virus that we now know as COVID-19, which today has had almost 338 million cases, and there have been over 5.57 million deaths due to coronavirus, and it is one of the deadliest known in history after the Black Death, which was caused by the bubonic plague of the 14th century Europe and Northern Africa, the Spanish flu that hit the world in the early 20th century, or the plague of Justinian, and the global HIV/AIDS epidemic, which we have known around us since the early 1980s. And in the past 2 years since COVID-19 hit, the world has at times stopped in its tracks. Borders have been closed, systems have been shut down, economies have catapulted into recession, health systems have been strained, and millions of sources of livelihood have been lost as many of the prevailing ills of society have been accentuated. At the peak, the virus escalated the scourges of poverty, unemployment, inequality, gender-based violence, xenophobia, institutional racism, and discrimination. You name it. The virus almost brought up all the ills into a tangible form so that we can see them much better. But the virus also questioned many norms and many perceptions of the norms, whether it is our perceptions on the most effective ways of schooling or transferring education, whether it is our perceptions on the norms of the honorable ways of conducting funeral rites, or how to create community through religious gatherings, or how to gather together in political gatherings, or how to commemorate the institution of marriage, which has always been seen as a great point of celebration. How to reimagine the workplace. We've had to find different ways of working and still achieving the requisite results, but also what actually constitutes social interaction. And us finding ourselves here on this platform, in an online platform, is just one of the ways that we have found an evolution that has been accentuated by this virus called COVID-19. And the virus has also gone through a number of mutations, and each variant has caused a wave that has particular characteristics, or can I say particular flavors. And some of the perceptions that showed a marked shift in those who contracted the virus were the sensory perceptions of smell and taste. And I know in the earlier variants of the virus, smell and taste, the olfactory and the gustatory systems were highly affected. Now, as humans, modern science will tell us that, like many animals, we have five senses. We have the sense of touch, the sense of sight, the sense of hearing, the sense of smell, and the sense of taste. And then I know there was a movie that came out some decades ago called The Sixth Sense. And then we'll be told that there's actually another kind of sense that cannot be necessarily physiologically, manifested, but that, people just have a certain sense of things, which, is often called as the sixth sense. And these senses are processed by the brain, especially the five senses that science tells us about. And when we have something like touch, sight, and hearing, they are what we call spatial or topographical senses, which are mapped in the brain in a very predictable pattern. But then we have another sense, which is the sense of smell, which is different. And what is found is that inputs from our nose go into the brain's olfactory cortex, and that these are not organized in the same predictable way as those of touch, sight, and hearing. But instead, it doesn't seem to have a predictable organization. It is almost a scattered spray of brain cell islands. And taste is found to have more, to be more like smell, which is more complex, than to be like like touch, sight, and hearing, which have very predictable patterns within the brain. And taste is therefore even more complex than vision and hearing, even though they seem to be very, very important. I mean, for instance, there are just three types of photoreceptors that are responsible for color vision, whereas humans have at least 25 different receptors for sensing the taste of bitterness. 3 for seeing color, 25 just for bitterness alone. And so the sense of taste is equivalent to the excitation of taste receptors and receptors, which for a large number of chemicals that have been identified to contribute to the reception or the perception of taste. And despite the complexity, the human body is seen to have normally 5 types of taste senses. There's that which is the taste of sweetness, which usually indicates something that's rich in calories or nutrients, and it's something that we tend to want, something that's sweet. And then there's salty, the salty taste, which usually allows to modulate the diet for electrolyte balance. And then we have a sour taste that usually indicates a taste of acids, so acidic fruit, for example. Then we have a bitter taste, which usually allows us to sense a large sense or diverse of natural toxins. And then in the 1980s, a Japanese scientist categorized another sense, which is the taste which is called umami, which is the taste of amino acids. So this is the taste that you have of meat or something like aged cheese. And so these are the five senses that are normally associated with taste. So, I mean, imagine that you're eating a mango or you're eating a pineapple, or maybe you're sipping a favorite cocktail, or maybe you're sipping lemonade, and you get an explosion of flavor in your mouth. You know, there's often a complexity of sensation. Maybe it's the sweetness, that is in the sugar, but it's also in the taste, in the example of a pineapple, also there's a sourness, that you have that is mixed, in complexity, with the sweetness. And what we know is that this taste doesn't just happen on the tongue. It's processed, through a whole lot of chemicals that move to the brain, and every taste is actually a constellation of brain cells which are mapped in the brain from the chemical signals that we receive from the food, which in turn interprets them as either sweet, sour, bitter, salty, or umami. And so this mechanism of taste begins on the tongue, where we have thousands of taste buds, which are concentrated in what we call papillae, which are, the tiny bumps that we see if we look at the tongue and, we stick out our tongue and look in the mirror. And but we also have taste buds on the roof of the mouth and in the throat. And each of these taste buds, includes, about up to even 100 specialized cells that contain taste receptors. And then these are activated when they come into contact with the chemical compounds in foods and drinks. And these then are translated into an electrical message, which is relayed by the taste nerves to the brainstem. And this is where the initial taste processing takes place. This is all in the proverb, by the way. And so from there, these impulses are related to other parts of the brain, and where they affect conscious perception of the taste and therefore influence emotions and memories. And so you can imagine that when people had the previous variants of COVID-19, and many people started knowing they had COVID-19 because suddenly they lost the sensation of being able to smell and taste their foods and everything that is associated with this particular sense. So taste is not only physiological, but it is also psychological, and it is even sociological. If you consider what happens when you're sitting at a dinner table and you've presented a meal that everybody is able to ingest at the same time and actually share in what it is that conglomeration of tastes is doing at a sociological level. Now, scientists will tell us that, on the other hand, our genetic makeup, has a lot to do with tastes that we find appealing and those that we may find intolerable. And normally we find that the sweet taste tends to be appealing, while the bitter taste tends to be intolerable. And usually life experiences and other triggers, also shape our taste preferences. And therefore, the tongue is actually an incredible diagnostic tool, because it tells us so much, in terms of what it is that we ingest, or it makes decisions about what it is that we ingest, which it feeds to the brain, and yet this is not just what's happening in terms of that physiological perception, but it's also what's happening at an emotional perception. It's also what's happening at a psychological perception point, and it's also what's happening at a sociological perception point. And all of this is part of the bite-sized information that is contained in our proverb today. And our proverb specifically speaks of two tastes, the bitter taste and the sweet taste. And, bitter receptors are actually really, really important, because often things that are toxic tend to be bitter. And so, as our ancestors knew that if they were sensitive to bitter taste, this was critical for their survival, because the bitterness, would be able to determine whether or not something is toxic or whether it is calorie rich. And bitter taste receptors in the intestines help us and protect us from being poisoned by detecting, toxic substances, and therefore promoting and prompting the body's ability to expel them. And this is usually either through purging, or through diarrhea. And what's been found is that the bitter taste receptors in the nose also help potentially to fight sinus infections. So this bitter taste is really, really important in the human body. Because it tells us that something might be dangerous. For instance, when food becomes spoiled, it becomes sour, and eventually it may become bitter, and therefore it tells us that something has become spoiled. And because of this, bitter and sour are often described as what we call aversive tastes, because as humans tend not to like these tastes, they tend to be averse to them. Whereas the other three tastes, sweet, salty, and the umami taste that we find in amino acids rich foods such as meat, are appetitive tastes. They're often things that are liked. And so these two, aversive and appetitive, tend to be competing for attention within our taste buds and therefore within our senses, because ultimately everything is processed in the brain. But it's not just processed in the brain, it's also processed in the spirit as well. And this is what African wisdom or indigenous wisdom will tell us around the sense of taste. Now, let me move a bit, away from kind of the scientific, the Western scientific understanding of taste, and let me touch a bit onto an indigenous paradigm and move into traditional Chinese medicine. And in traditional Chinese medicine, we have different elements. And these elements often have associations with many different things. And taste is actually one of those elements, one of those associations that is associated with some of the elements. And the elements being earth, water, fire, wood, and metal. Now, let's go to that appetitive taste, that one of sweet, which we love so much. And according to traditional Chinese medicine, sweet is the flavor of earth. Sweet, it's associated with the earth element. And this sweet taste, it tonifies, it harmonizes, it moistens, and it contains the fire. It guides the life force, or what is called qi, to the spleen, and it is the flavor of grains such as rice and millet. And, it is gentle, it is nourishing, and is suitable for almost everyone. And this is why we find that children in particular naturally desire sweet foods, which, as they continue to strengthen their digestive systems in order to be able to have the full compendium of tastes, within their taste buds. And this affinity for sweet flavors is also an inbuilt mechanism to protect from harsh or poisonous foods that can cause harm to their young developing bodies. And so this is why they crave, those sweets, and yet even tonic herbs, such as licorice, or jujube dates, will have a flavor that has sweetness, because this sweetness helps to tonify, and it can also help to facilitate concentration, to alleviate mental restlessness, and support restful sleep. And so there's a reason why we become attracted to this particular taste. But then we have, on the opposite scale of sweet, we have the bitter taste, which is an aversive taste. We tend not to like that taste. So in modern medicine, what they'll do is, if it so happens that the medicine is bitter, they will encapsulate it in a capsule, so that you don't have to experience that bitterness, within your mouth. But according to Chinese medicine, bitter is the flavor of fire. It drains downwards, it dries, and it guides energy to the heart. And yet, the ability to have an aversion to this bitter tasting food is actually a product of evolution. Bitter flavors, as I've said before, warn us of potentially toxic substances, and so our ancestors actually learned to avoid them. And yet bitterness is a common profile of herbs, which are actually medicinal. But herbs don't necessarily fall into the realm of foods per se, but they tend to fall into the realms of that which might be toxic, but also might assist us in averting illness. So, and what we know from indigenous medicines at any rate is that the more bitter the herb, likelihood is that the more potent it is. And we know from science that it's because things like alkaloids and glycosides and flavonoids, which are often bitter, help to support the circulatory and the nervous system. And so this is why, if you come to, for instance, our First Nations people here in Southern Africa, if you come to the Sand people, they will rush, if your immune system is low, they will rush to find, for instance, Sutherlandia or Kankerbush or Cancerbush, which is incredibly bitter, and they'll tell you that the more bitter the tastes, the more potent it is in order to boost your immune system. And so they do not run away from the bitterness, even though it is a naturally aversive taste, or we've evolved into seeing it as an aversive taste. But instead, they run towards it as part of the compendium of the medicine bag, that which is the potential to heal. So what they see is that the bitterness from a physiological, psychological, sociological, and spiritual point of view is can have the potential to bring healing. And what we know from indigenous medicine, that which is the potential to kill also has the potential to bring life. There isn't a dichotomy in ways of seeing things. There is an interdependence in the ways that all of life exhibits itself. So the very same thing that has the potential to kill also has the potential to heal. And so they take the bitter taste very seriously, because even though it may point towards a toxin, it may also point towards the most potent medicine. And that is what we find, that even in, for instance, with traditional healers in Southern Africa, they consider the gall of an animal, if they happen to be those that perform sacrifices, which is the most bitter part of that animal, to be the most potent in bringing about spiritual protection, spiritual healing, etc. And so, but one has to understand the fine line between the toxic and the healing. And in order to do this, one has to develop another sense, which is the sense that is the sense of discernment. So I know you've asked me what Credo Mutwa would say as well. And so let me just go back to who Credo Mutwa is. And if we read one of his books, Songs of the Stars, he'll also tell you about the importance of bitter medicine, that it is the most bitter medicine that helps to cure the most potent, of illnesses. And something interesting about Credo Mutwa is that just around the time when, as I said, on the 30th of January 2 years ago, what we now know as COVID-19, as part of a pandemic, was being declared as something of global concern by the World Health Organization. Around this time, Credo Mutwa, the great seer from South Africa, was also starting to see his last breaths, and he eventually ended up passing away just after, the COVID-19 was declared a pandemic. It was declared a pandemic on the 11th of March, 2020, and he passed away on the 25th of March, 2020. And this was just a day before South Africa went into national lockdown as a preemptive precaution to limit the spread of COVID-19. And what we know about his life at the time, he was just before 99 years of age. And through the 10 decades of his life, he made many predictions. And many of the predictions that he made were of a time such as this. So there was a time that I went to him to tell him that one of the great San elders, Jan van der Westhuizen or Janjiku, had passed away. And he said to me, "Oh my God, there's a great time that's coming. It's a time, more terrible than I can tell, And now I'm alone if you're telling me that the great Bushman or San elder has passed away." And so it is very interesting that he chose to pass away just at the time when this virus, which is also asking us to change our perceptions, including our perception of taste, because this taste, was this perception, was also impacted by the earlier variants. Now, something that Credo Mutwa would tell us, and I'm going to quote him directly, as we go back to the fact that modern science tells us that we've got 5 senses. We've got the sense of touch, taste, smell, hearing, and smell. He says, there is nothing supernatural. Everything is natural. We in Africa know that the human possesses 12 senses, not 5 senses as Western people believe. But he says, I'm not allowed to say much more, but I can tell you this. Man possesses the sense not only to foresee future events, but also to move out of his body at will sometimes. But this only happens in times of crisis. Man also possesses the ability to influence objects. So, Credo Mutwa, the great Credo Mutwa, tells us that the 5 senses that we've come to understand as being the senses that humans have, plus that one extra sense that we call the 6th sense, which is not necessarily physiologically measurable. He's telling us that this is only half of our abilities as humans to sense, because as humans we have the ability to cultivate 12 senses. But the dulling of our senses, any of these 5 senses, by modernity, has also dulled our ability to tap into the other 6 senses, which, Credo Mutwa would tell us about. And we know that taste is something that has been colonized by modernity. If we look at the foods that certainly here in Africa that we eat, and I'll give an example of here being in South Africa. I grew up in a number of African countries around South Africa, and in those countries we had a large variety of leafy greens, all sorts of different vegetables that grew. Many of them grew wild, whether it is amaranth, known as nyeve or tepe, whether it was pumpkin leaves or whether it was okra leaves, or, there was just a huge variety of leafy greens, each of them with their particular superfood abilities, which formed an ecological, interdependent, interconnected, and interrelated web that helps to boost the immune system, but also that has a different sensation on the tongue in terms of texture and taste, and therefore its ability to impact the brain, and therefore its ability to impact our perceptions, including those perceptions that are attributed to the 12 senses or the 6 senses that are in a bit of a mystery capsule as told to us by Credo Mutwa. Now, here in South Africa, what I was very surprised to find when I first came is that the vegetables that I could find at the time when I came here, over 20 years ago, were spinach and cabbage and potatoes. And that is what you found on a large scale. And spinach, cabbage, and potatoes are not indigenous to this land. And all the indigenous vegetables, which are now being found to be superfoods into their to impact the body, the emotions, the spirit, on a large scale, had all been but decimated. And this is part of the taste colonization of modernity. And what has happened is that due to the colonization by food, and therefore the removal of certain foods that are important not only for the sense of taste, but also for the overall well-being of the human in relation to their psychology and in relation to their sociology, has had a very large impact in the state of the world today, or in the state of Africa today. So it is really important that we decolonize. I know one of our great writers, spoke about the decolonization of the mind. But beyond the decolonization of the mind, we also need to go into the decolonization of taste, and go back into how our tastes perception was able to be an oracle that was able to foresee the future and, to give the history of the past and therefore to impact what it is that our present is today. And so our elders would tell us that everything is written in the patterns of the universe, and therefore we should not trap ourselves in the polarization and the dichotomized views of the modern world. Our elders, our ancient African elders, would tell us to practice the principle of circumspection, to be able to take a step back, to take a deep breath, and survey the entirety of the terrain. And all of this we can do even with our tongue. And through this, they would tell us to take things apart, to look at the outer differences of things in segregation. They would put things together to look at the outer similarities of things in congregation. They would look at things in depth, looking at inner differences in analysis, or looking for inner similarities in the integrated core with synthesis. Our elders were analytical and synthetic in their abilities to see the world. They were critical in their approach, and they sought truth. And a lot of this truth is found in the taste buds. And we'll see this with babies. What do? The first thing that they see when they see something, the first thing they want to do is to subjective to the great oracle of the tongue. Because that is our innate ability to activate all those other senses within us. And when we're able to do this, then we're able to acknowledge our individual and our collective resources to find ways that is able to offer a diagnosis, a treatment, and a prognosis of the problems that we find our world in today. So our elders would tell us to expand our sensory perception so that we can expand our awareness of life itself. And if all we desire is sweetness, to the exclusion of the other four tastes, whether it is bitter, salty, sour, or umami, we restrict our sensory awareness of the great expanse of the cosmos. We limit our brain function. We limit our emotive function. We limit our spiritual function. We limit our soul. And so, back to our proverb, a man who thinks everything around him is sweet should remember that bitter leaves grow in the bush with oranges. Let us expand our taste perception, and in expanding our taste perception, let us expand all our perceptions and activate the 12 senses that we're told about by Credo Motto.
Thank you. That was an entire class, an entire class that you just facilitated. And, we have quite a few people in the clubhouse room. So far, we've had over 47 people have come in to the room and left. We have 17 people who are currently listening. And thank you, Go. I just want to relate what you said when it comes to the power of taste and the tongue with an incident between me and my youngest daughter yesterday, where I sent her to go and grab for me a wipe under the sink so that we could clean the table, and she grabbed a spray under the sink, and I saw her putting it in her mouth. She wanted to spray it, to taste it, to understand what it was, because I was watching her from far and I saw her looking at it. She didn't make sense of it, and then right before she sprayed it, I grabbed it. So it's quite amazing how today's proverb is relatable to the incident I experienced yesterday. And if you're just joining us, my guest today is the incredible Gogo Rutendo Ngara, and Gogo joins me every Thursday and just takes us deeper into the proverb for the day that we have. And today we are discussing a Nigerian proverb, and the proverb says, "A man who thinks everything around him is sweet should remember that bitter leaves grow in the bush with oranges." So the last half an hour, Gogo Rutendo Ngara has been, dissecting this proverb for us. She shared also what African spirituality would say about it, and then she shared with us what the polymath, the late Credo Mutua, would also say about this proverb. Now we want to open the floor for all of you who are on stage on Clubhouse, so that you can provide comments to Gogo Rutendo Ngara, and then she will come back in a moment to just wrap everything together, just respond to some of the comments you had for her, and also we want to hear your own interpretation of today's proverb. But if you're also wondering where Gogo Rutendo is speaking from, you can join us on YouTube. The link to the YouTube live stream is at the top of the room. We are live streaming as we speak, and if you're watching on YouTube, I encourage you to also leave us your comment with your interpretation of this proverb, and subscribe to my channel, so that when we have these conversations, you can continue being a part of it. I want to quickly invite you, Mala, to share your perspectives and comments to Gogo Rutendo Ngara. Then Gogo, please stay with us so that you can close today's session with anything else you'd like us to learn. And if you're able, it would be amazing for you to do a grounding for us today as well. Thank you so much.
Great day, everyone, from Philadelphia. This is Marla. It is always a pleasure, one, to be in this room and to share the stage with so many of you. But these special sessions with our sister are just phenomenal. Like you said, it is a class. I had my notebooks out. There's not much left to say, but I'll say what resonated with me is just the idea of coexistence, that we all have a function, and that due to colonization, we can be trained or predisposed to judge things as opposite or not like us, but we grow in the bush in harmony and in tandem, and we have function and service to one another. To your point about the medicine, right? Like all medicine isn't sweet. All of life isn't sweet. And so we learn from the sweet. We are informed by the sweet, and likewise, but in different ways from the bitter. And so it's an invitation to expand our capacity, to grow in our understanding, to grow as beings. So that's where it landed with me. I will keep it brief so I get to my favorite part, our grounding exercise. So great day, and thank you, dear sister, for being with us. Much love, Simon, and to everyone on the stage. I'm complete.
Thank you so much, Mala, and also thank you for your continued support with promoting the Daily African Proverbs. Without that, we can't do this on our own. Let's hear from Dr. Wanda as well. Dr. Wanda, what's your perspective on today's proverb, and any comments to Gogo?
Oh, good morning, everyone. It's nice to be in the room pondering another proverb. Actually, yeah, it was very interesting. Just even listening to the conversation, because as you know, I'm trained in Western science, and it's so interesting because there's a principle basically that states that anything can be a poison. It just has to do with the amount of degree. So there's a thin line. So even water could become toxic if too much is drank. Drink too much water in too short amount of time, then that could even also become a poison. That just kind of resonates with me about the things about bitter and sweet. In terms of the proverb, the thing that I kept thinking of was, is it a friend or is it a foe? And sometimes the answer is not as intuitive as we think, because a rose has thorns, and people are like that, right? You have the most beautiful, warm, loving people, but then they also have a thorny side as well. And just as a proverb, you have to take the bitter with the sweet, and even the bitter can heal you, as we just heard, because a lot of even Western medicines are bitter, and they're not even just from a Western scientific point of view. A lot of them also are not what you would call water soluble. So you have to do a lot of compounding and things like that in order for them to even be ingested. Like we think about aspirin, which is very commonly known. But what a lot of people don't know is that aspirin is found in the bark of a willow tree, and that's how we came about with aspirin, and even Taxol, which is a very potent treatment used for cancer, also derived from the bark of a tree, also very bitter. also not easily dissolved. You know, it had to go through compounding and things like that, but yet still has additional properties in its natural state and even also in its compounded state to make it more palatable. So even bitterness can become more palatable. So therefore, is it a friend or is it a foe is not always the first thing, because sugar is sweet, but it causes too much will be diabetes. We have rotten teeth, which leads to heart disease, and so on and so on. So it's very interesting when you travel the life. You cannot always gravitate to the sweet and avoid the bitter because you might in fact harm yourself. And I'm complete.
Thank you so much, Dr. Wanda, for your perspectives. Let's hear from Soleil. Share with us your thoughts as well. Thank you so much.
Yes, hello, Simone. Well, I'm delighted that I caught you again, and I will try my best not to miss any more of your programs, because I would say that just yesterday I said to Abraxas, the icon of Clubhouse, that I visiting a number of African rooms. I assume that there is a new breed of young people, very highly educated, with this very high IQ, very smart, talking in such a beautiful style, deeply thinking, and from heart. I'm absolutely fascinated with this new trend. And I can promise you that I will find all of you guys. And we'll make up like a community. You will be in touch with each of you, because it's really amazing. And I believe that you will be able all together to make your continent absolutely amazing, even much more beautiful than it's right now. Thank you.
You're most welcome. Thank you so much. I truly appreciate your comments. Austin, let's hear from you as well. What are your perspectives on today's proverb?
Good morning, Simon. Good morning, all my brothers and sisters in Gogo. About Sabui, buen dia. Once again, I'm just honored to be here. I'm not going to keep it long because Gogo really touched on some things that I think she needs to be invited back and talk on the 12th census again, because that just really caught my attention. But in reference to the today's proverb, a man who thinks everything around him is sweet should remember that bitter leaves grow in the bush with oranges. Very shortly, I can just say I think of bittersweet. I think of good and bad. When I think of that, I think of experiences. And the only thing I can relate to that hits at the core to me is the fact that a lot of times, at least my personal experience, out of very difficult situations, so out of those bitter experiences have come some of the most wonderful times in my life where I've had the largest amount of growth. And I just, relate that back to bittersweet, good and bad experiences. You can't always walk in a path that's roses and everything is sweet as honey. Sometimes you have to go through a path that is difficult, that's thorny, and it's bitter. And that duality that Gogo was talking about, relationship to things of taste. And we taste bitter things, but a lot of times those things are actually good for us. So things that are sweet, too much of a good thing is bad for us. So that's all I want to say as soon as the mic. And again, I look forward to Gogo coming back and treating us to hear more about the 12th census. Thank you.
You're most welcome, Austin. Gogo is here every Thursday, and she noted that she'll speak to your request in a moment. I truly appreciate your continued support. I saw that Zizi is back. Zizi, I want to pass you the microphone before I go to Jiba. Zizi, I hope you're doing well. Share with us your thoughts on today's proverb.
Well, I think what I understand from this proverb is that when you think everything is sweet, we should also remember that life happens. And there are a lot of uncontrollable events that can take place which we have no control over. Like, as they say, like hurricanes, volcanoes, whatever happens that is something I cannot control, you cannot control. we should keep in mind that it's not always happy-go-lucky. Everything is, sickness happens, death happens, so many other things happen, which makes us, you have to be aware. Don't live like, you have to be in moderation. Like, don't get overjoyed for good things and then very depressed about bad things. So if we live with the concept that there are many things that happen not against us, for us in the long run, but they are what they are uncontrollable. No one has control over them, especially things that are a result of nature. Sometimes we interfere in the passage of a river and change it so then they have a flood because of some technical stuff. So many other things we are responsible for. So if we operate with the mindset that we are responsible and we are creators, then I think we should be always functioning in moderation, not being stingy, not being a spendthrift, but moderate. Everything in a way that we are really moderate in our ways. So that's the way I look at it, that you can't just forget about life. Life happens, and we have to be prepared and even prepare our children for it. That there are things that are going to happen.
Thank you, Zizi. I appreciate your perspectives as well. I think you are not totally done, and your network could be a challenge. Zizi, are you done with sharing your thoughts? I just want to make sure. Okay, we are going to go to Jiba. Jiba, I hope you're doing well. Share with us your thoughts on today's proverb.
Hey, Brother Simon. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Glad to be back again. For me, this proverb, what I think our ancestors trying to tell us is that on your way up, during good time, don't forget the people. This a saying in Liberia that we often say. On your way up the ladder, don't forget the people below, because on your way back down, they're gonna be the same people that you're gonna need. So yeah, while there is truth all around us, there might be some sweetness or sweet fruits. You should also be aware that there is bitter fruits around you. So there's good time, there's hard time, and just be cognizant. When you are blessed with life, bountiful blessing. Just remember, those around that don't have that same privilege, because all of what you have can soon go away, and you're gonna be back in that same stage of bitterness. So that's what I think they, pretty much trying to tell us to be mindful of, the opportunity, the blessing we have, and not being carried away. So I'm Jiba, and I'm done speaking.
Thank you very much, Jiba. I appreciate you sharing your perspectives. And I want to just recognize Elder Jay Naidu, who has been with us since the very beginning of the room today. I also want to recognize Sarah, who is an amazing contributor to this space. Thank you both for being here with us today. And also to everybody in the room. This is a special space that we've built since January last year on Clubhouse, and over the last 8 months on YouTube as well. And we continue helping change the narrative about Africa, one proverb at a time. We continue, protecting and preserving our culture and making our ancestors proud by discussing these proverbs every day. So thank you for being a part of this journey. While you're on Clubhouse, I encourage you to ping in 3 to 5 people to join us for the conversation, and also follow the African Father in America Club, so that as we continue building this community, we involve you in laying the bricks. If you're watching on YouTube, please subscribe to the channel. Thank you again, and let's hear from you, Oracle. Thank you for joining us.
Peace to the room, wholeness and abundance. Peace to you, King Simon. Thank you, Marla, for pinging me to this room. This is my first time in this space, and I am here with much gratitude. And peace to you, also, Goddess Gogo. My name is Sybil, Sybil means oracle. It is my name and my office. And this year, as I have begun my mentorship program called God is Training 101, I've had the occasion to have a conversation with one of my mentees. She was going through a bitter spell in life, and she said, I'm going to make this tea. It was suggested that I drink bitter tea, and I'm going to put some honey in it, and I'm going to know, Goddess, it's bitter for a reason. It's bitter for a reason. And I encouraged her that, if a cup of it is a little much to take, then just take it by teaspoonfuls at a time. But we must learn to embrace the bitter. It's rather, I believe, ironic, maybe I'll say, that even as I listened to Gogo speak, I was standing here preparing my bitter herbs during my morning hydro ritual. I use bitter herbs on a regular because they tonify the digestive organs. And as a crone, as an elder, I suppose it may be my vanity that has me pursuing some form of youthfulness, but to the point, these organs do keep us healthy. They keep us informed about what's going on in the body. And so it's dandelion, a little burdock root, a little yellow dock, and I don't know, maybe there's a thistle and golden seal in the mix. But since it's so bitter, and I don't like bitter, I don't take it by mouth. So use your sanctified imagination. In the meantime, to conclude my comments, I am with Austin. I was piqued by Gogo's comments about the 12 senses. She has sent me on a quest to study and to expand my awareness. And I look forward to the day she returns to have that conversation about those 12 senses. I was grateful today in my rising, and I communicated to my daughter that I'm grateful. And I'm learning, even at the age of 60, to be grateful, not just necessarily in contrast to things being well as opposed to things being not so well, but that gratitude is a perpetual state in which I live. So it doesn't matter if I'm amongst the thistles or the briars, because all I have to give is gratitude. It doesn't matter if I'm among the brambles or sitting under a mango tree. It does not matter if pineapples float above my head. For everything I give thanks. I am grateful for being allowed to speak. I'm grateful for this space. I'm grateful for you, Goddess Gogo, for you, God King Simon, and for everyone else in this room. Gratitude and peace. I'm complete.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much, Oracle, for everything you shared and for your contribution today. Gogo has been nodding and she'll respond in a moment. Alexis, share with us your comments and perspectives on today's proverb. Thank you so much.
Yes. Habadiza Asubui, everyone. Good morning. Oh, go. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I'm so grateful to just be in this space this morning and to be able to hear what you had to say about the 12 senses because, like everyone else, I have definitely been. Excuse my interest is like you literally almost forget what my interpretation was when you said that. So um, I'm definitely ready to learn much more about that. But my interpretation of the proverb, the word that stood out most for me was who. Okay. For a person to think something means that they believe it, and that is something that they were taught because everything that we grow to learn in life is something that we learned from um, people around us, from our environment, from the places and things that we experience. And when someone thinks something, that's just because they've learned it, believe it. And once you become a certain age, you find that things that you were taught aren't always true. which is what this proverb speaks to me, is that when we are told things, when we're raised a certain way, when we only know certain things, when you get to a certain age in life, and it could be as a child, you'll know that something that you have learned may not be true. It's just what your family may understand and think of as true. So to me, I really do believe that this speaks of, the way that people are actually um, just like Gogo said, like the colonization of how it was colonized out of our understanding that we actually have 12 senses. So for us to actually learn more about that, even now, uh, that actually has piqued our thinking, and now now understand, hey, we're open to the fact that there are 12 senses instead of six. Prior to just now, I had no idea.
Thank you, Alexis. This is Simon speaking. I think you might have
Okay.
received a phone call. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh no. Okay. Yeah, that's all I wanted to go to ground us, and I just that's my interpretation today. Thank you so much, Simon, for this space.
You're most welcome, Alexis. Thank you so much for your continued support and for your contribution today. Vito, share with us your perspectives, please. Okay, Vito, we will give you time. We'll go to Simone. Simone, I hope you're doing well. Share with us your perspectives and any comments to Gogo. Then we'll come back to Vito and then come to Gogo to close us out with comments and then ground us before we wrap up our session today. So, Simone, the mic is yours.
Good morning, Simon. It's so great to be in this room again. I've missed you for a long time. I want to thank Marla for inviting me in. I had the opportunity. I did not hear Gogo's presentation. By the time I came into the room, she was wrapping up, so I would make time to listen to the replay either here or on YouTube. But I heard that someone mentioned she's talked about us having 12 senses, which I find pretty intriguing, and I have to do more research on that because I teach a course called Spirituality and Your Ancestors. And we talk about the five senses and how those senses can be used in your love language in communicating with your ancestors. So this is something I really have to look deeper in and study what she's saying. But the proverb for me resonated in a way, whereas I was thinking about my own personal life and my spiritual growth and my spiritual journey, and how at times my experiences and what I go through with it is sometimes such a marvelous thing. It is so sweet in many ways. And then there are times when it is sour. Then there are times when it is bitter. But because of my growth in managing all of these different ups and downs and emotions, you recognize that growth in when the bitter happens, how you manage that energy, how you react to that energy. And sometimes I need to withdraw and sit with myself when I feel like an energy is coming that will not, serve my higher self or do well in the situation that is causing the bitterness. So that is the way in which, this proverb sits with me in my own personal growth, not just as a spiritualist and on my spiritual journey, but as a woman, and the different challenges in life that I maneuver and how I manage that using all of these spiritual wellness tools I gather through my spiritual journey. So that's just my little take on it. Thank you, Simon, again for having this room. I'm going to mark it. What time do you come on again? On Eastern time?
I think it's 9 a.m. Eastern Time and 9 a.m. Eastern Time, 6 a.m. PST, 5 p.m. East African Time. I think it's 3 p.m. South African Time. Gogo?
4
Oh,
p.m.
4 p.m. South African time. Okay. We
If
are
it's 9, it's 10 for me because I'm still in the Caribbean and I'm still in Barbados. So I'm going
fantastic.
to mark that in my calendar and make sure that I sit in these rooms for sure because I really do miss them. And thank you for holding this space. My name is Simone and I'm done speaking.
Thank you so much, Simon, and keep up the amazing work that you do as well. Vito, let's check in with you briefly. Are you there? Just tap your mic if you're ready. If you're not, it's okay. We'll hear from you next time. Go. Thank you again for patiently listening in to everyone's contribution. I would love for you to take it from here. Before you do that, though, I just want to welcome everyone who has just joined us for the Daily African Proverbs. This is a session we host every Monday to Friday, 6 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. And every Thursday, Gogo Rutendo Ngara is our special guest. So I'll pass it on to you, Gogo, to share your closing remarks and to ground us.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Simon. And I've certainly heard everybody about the 12 senses. That should be one of our sessions one of these days. I love how Proverbs unpacks so much, and just everybody's comments have created so much richness, to just 2 lines of proverb, and so much has come out of that. And I'd just like to Mama Alexis peeked, a different way of looking into the proverb, when she spoke about, the word think. And since this proverb is from Nigeria, let me just add to that. And from Nigerian cosmology or Yoruba cosmology, the deity or the principle or the archetypal energy that is responsible for thinking is Elegba or Eshu. And Elegba or Eshu is often known as the trickster. He's often canine, like a hyena or a fox, and, he thinks. And often he thinks he's the principle of wisdom, when he thinks he's the Ifa, when he's not the Ifa, but he's the messenger of the Ifa. So I'd like to go into another word in the proverb, which is remember. And remember is attributed to another deity within that cosmology, which is the deity called Yemanya or Yemoja or Yemaya. She's got different names depending on how you want to pronounce her, as an Orisha. And she is the mother, goddess. She is the one who governs the waters. She's the one who governs and she's the one who governs transcendence as well. And she's the one who governs remembering. And when we speak about remembering, we're speaking about the principle of memory, which this proverb tells us to tap into the principle of memory. So there's that which we think now, but it's telling us that we need to activate the memory of what it is that our ancestors knew, in the past. But remember also tells us about bringing together the fragments of that which has been broken into a remembered state, bringing them back together. And remember is also about reminding us that we are members of community. And so when we come in from the Orisha perspective and we look at this proverb, we're looking at Elegba is quite masculine in his characteristics, whereas Yemanja is feminine in her characteristics. We're also seeing how not only to balance the bitter and the sweet, but to balance the masculine and the feminine ways of perceiving things. Perceiving things not just from the perspective of the trickster, but also from the perspective of the mother, who helps us not only get into trance, but also transcend our current state of being into an expanded way of being. And that's where we'd go to when we speak about the 12 senses. And as we're expanding that, we remember, as everyone has been speaking about bittersweet, that bitterness, just like a car, when you don't use a car, it dies. The battery dies. You need to replace the battery, or the mechanical aspects. If they're steel based or iron based, they will start to to deteriorate, to rust, etc. And in the same way, we know that with our own muscles, if you sit in a bed all day, your muscles start to atrophy. If you do not use your brain starts to atrophy. So by the same token, in order for us to be fully alive, we need to activate that sense of bitterness. And this is the difference between our constant moving, as one of my spiritual teachers will say, between pleasure and pain. We tend to have this constant battle between trying to move between pleasure and pain. But what happens when we add an extra sense or an extra attribute to that, which is that of peace? And when we add peace to that, we know that nothing is against us. Not the most bitter, not the most thorny, not the most painful. Nothing is against us. As one of our brothers and sisters said earlier, everything is actually for us. And when we either enjoy the bitterness, or if we can't enjoy the bitterness, as my spiritual teacher would say, we find peace in the bitterness, then we open up the gates of wisdom and spiritual power. And that's when we start to understand what, the openings of the gates of the senses that we are not using. So, in closing, I invite us to just to make ourselves comfortable. And if you happen to be sitting, just that awareness of your feet on the ground, or, your gluteus maximus and minimus, your buttocks, on the chair or on the floor or on the bed that you're sitting on. And I'd like to invite us to very consciously place the tongue, which is the organ that we have spent a lot of time on today, onto the roof of your mouth. And what we know certainly from our Taoist teachings, is that once you place your tongue on the roof of your mouth, you close what we call your microcosmic orbit. So we are actually a great conducting circuit. And once we place the tongue on the roof of the mouth, we are closing the microcosmic orbit and allowing that circuit to continue moving. And I invite us to take a deep breath in and exhale. And breathing in and exhale. And breathing in and exhale. And I invite you with every breath to move back a year. So taking a deep breath in. As you breathe out, take yourself back to the 20th of January 2021. What was happening? Breathing in. As you breathe out, 20th of January 2020. Breathing in. As you exhale, the 20th of January 2019. Breathing in. As you exhale, the 20th of January 2018. Breathing in. As you exhale, the 20th of January 2017. You're inhaling. As you exhale, the 20th of January 2016. You're breathing in. Exhaling, the 20th of January 2015. Breathing in. Breathe out, 20th of January 2014. You inhale. Breathing out, the 20th of January 2013. Inhale. Breathing out, 20th of January 2012. And I just invite us to breathe in and out the past 10 years. We're breathing in. Exhale. You're breathing in. You exhale. You inhale. You exhale. And just continue breathing as you focus on every single taste over the past 10 years that has entered into your mouth, that has sat on your tongue, that has tingled your taste buds, that has caused you aversion, revulsion, that has caused you pleasure, that has caused you well-being, that has increased your serotonin levels and has made you feel the fullness of life, or that has brought you into a state of depression, anxiety, or depletion. So I invite you just to breathe that in and exhale, and breathe in and exhale. And I invite us to focus on all that brought sweetness, all that which brought beauty and light and laughter, and just allow that taste to flow through the microcosmic orbit, through your body. From the roof of your mouth, you feel it moving all the way up through your nostrils, over the top of your head, the back of your head, moving all the way down your back, down your spine, all the way under your groin, all the way up your pelvic bone to your dantian, which is 2.5 centimeters below your navel. I also invite you to take that taste down from your tongue, down the front of your body, all the way down past your chest, your solar plexus, past your abdomen, past your belly button, back to your dantian. And just allow that sensation of sweetness to flow through your being, the sweetness you've experienced over and over the past 10 years. Allow yourself to experience and insperience how that has piqued your life, or at times plummeted your life. And I invite you to take another deep breath in. And as you exhale the sweetness. You breathe in and exhale the sweetness. One more time, breathing in. Exhale, allowing that sweetness to dissipate. And this time we're breathing in when we're breathing in the bitterness. We're breathing in all that may have been aversive, all that may have been prickly, that may have appeared toxic, all that may have appeared that we'd like to move away from it, avoid it, that may have brought pain. And you're allowing all of that bitterness, in whatever form it may be, to tickle the roof of your mouth, through your palate, and move through your microcosmic orbit, up your nose, past your eye orbits, up your forehead, to the top of your head, down the back of your head, your neck, down your spine, into your lumbar spine, down into your coccyx, through your groin, up over your pelvic bone, and to your dantian, 2.5 centimeters below your navel. And you allow that bitterness to sit on your tongue as it moves down your throat, your front of your neck, down your chest, through your diaphragm, through your stomach, down your abdomen, past your belly button, to your dantian, where you now close that microcosmic orbit. And you're allowing this bitterness to circulate. All that you may have thought was bitter, all that may have been uncomfortable, prickly, over the past 10 years. How has it piqued your life? Or how has it plummeted it? And you take another deep breath in. And you exhale the bitterness. Deep breath in, releasing that bitterness. And deep breath in. And exhale, allowing that bitterness to release from your system. But you're allowing your perception to have been activated, expanded in terms of that which is sweet and that which is bitter. The bittersweet, the thorny thorns amongst the rose bushes. Allowing the breath, the bittersweet breath, to breathe you through from 2012 to 2013, from 2013 to 2014, 2014 to 2015, 2015 to 2016, 2016 to 2017, 2017 to 2018, 2018 to 2019, 2019 to the 20th of January 2020, 2020 to the 20th of January 2021, and taking your breath back to this moment, in this time, in this place and time and space. Allowing yourself to acknowledge your perceptions, your awareness, and any insights or lessons from within your inner oracle, and allowing yourself to release that all, being aware of your feet upon the ground or your buttocks or any part of you that is on the surface on which you are. Allowing yourself to be aware of any sounds around you, any smells, any tastes within your mouth. Allowing yourself to release your tongue from the roof of your mouth. And if your eyes were closed, you're opening them and bringing yourself into this moment, into this time. Ashe.
Ashe, Ashe. Thank you. Thank you so much, Gogo. I'm grateful. And also to everyone in the room, thank you for being here with us for the grounding and for the whole program. Gogo, I can't wait for next Thursday, so that we can go a little deeper on the 12 senses. And, tomorrow, for those who are in the room, I will be hosting Boniface Mwangi from Kenya. He's a photojournalist, he's an author. He's probably one of the most awarded photographers in Africa currently, but he's an activist too, that is really like the people's watchman. So he's a mentor of mine. He's someone I look up to, and I would love for you all to join us for that conversation. With that, we've come to the end of our time today. Gogo, I wonder if you have anything to say before we wrap up.
No, I think I'm complete. Thank you so much, Simon, and thank you to all those who are in community with us.
Wonderful. Thank you all so much. Have a beautiful day. See you tomorrow, 6 a.m. Pacific Standard Time.
African father in America. Tujikaze, tujikaze, jikaze. Tujikaze, tujikaze, jikaze. Africa, tujikaze, tujikaze, America. Tujikaze, tujikaze, jikaze.
You are listening to African Father in America podcast by Simon Javan Okello, live from Seattle, Washington, USA.